Hi, I'm Chris Badger. I'm the Executive Director of Adult Care Services at Hertfordshire County Council. So I think commissioning is going to be really important in terms of meeting the financial challenges we face. So I think one is securing really thorough and comprehensive market insight of what we're currently commissioning, but also what's being commissioned regionally and nationally. I think we need to think through different commissioning patterns, how we commission jointly with the NHS, how we commission jointly across local authorities, particularly for more specialist types of care, and having a much greater insight across the country, but certainly regionally, around volume of commissioned activity with providers, but also price is going to be really, really important. And then finally, I think I'd say commissioning needs to understand what are the new types of care and support that we need to deliver that secures people's independence as much as possible. Maybe look at things like shared lives, certainly much more enhanced supported living, and how can we look to generate and give the market confidence that that's a level of provision that we're seeking to secure in Hertfordshire and indeed nationally, to give providers that confidence to invest in those models of care. I think PAMS is a really important tool for us in Hertfordshire to determine as an up-to-date fashion as possible, the quality of our care provision within the county. For most people, it's the quality of the care provider they use is the biggest single element of their experience of social care. So it's vital that we get that quality up. One of the things that we use PAMS for is sort of a tactical level, day to day, as a way of making sure we're identifying providers that need here and now help to improve the quality of their care. Absolutely, that's a joint endeavour with colleagues in the Integrated Care Board, particularly around, for example, nursing homes. So short term, how can we support issues when they come up around quality? And then, for example, if we're seeing themes, make sure there's the right training and development for providers around, whether it be around sort of complex dementias or complex wound management. How can we support the sector upskill their workforce to support what we think are more complex and growing needs? And PAMS helps us identify some of those trends. Landscape brings together a lot of our financial information, service user information at an anonymised scale, and brings in that insight from other councils in the region, and that's a project we've worked really hard on in the East of England. In Hertfordshire, we use that first and foremost around the risk profiler element, which really looks to bring all that data together to understand which providers at a strategic level are most risky for us in terms of their likelihood of A, failing, and B, the impact were they to fail. So that allows us to then work with those providers to understand those risks, develop contingency plans were those risks to materialise, as well as, I think, again, looking at trends that we can see through the profiler around what common issues are driving risk in terms of the viability of providers. So we do that at an overall board level and periodically look at that set of risk profiled providers to understand that. Interestingly, some of those providers that come up, we would expect to be high risk, and we understand those to be high risks. When we look at risk profiler, we've really got underneath a number of providers that we weren't really expecting to be high on our risk analysis. When we've gone in and looked at what data risk profilers brought together, we've absolutely acknowledged and said, yeah, actually, they're much riskier than we'd have thought. But risk profilers generated that insight because it's brought different data elements together. I think when we move on to looking at all the councils coming in regionally, I suspect that's going to show that the region as a whole may be, for example, in a very specialist area of care, highly reliant on one or two providers, particularly where there might be placements across the borders, and that's where I think risks can get missed or dropped. And I think the ability to look at that at a regional level will also be really, really important for understanding the material risks that provider market might be facing. The biggest benefit of PAMS to our SMB, I think, is like up-to-date, at our fingertips, ability to access the latest possible view of a provider's quality. In many cases, that'll be a more up-to-date view than the CQC rating. So I think the ability to look at a specific provider, perhaps who's coming to see us about an issue, or when a case crops up, even an emergency case that crops up to us out of hours, it's very important to see what we know about that provider at the click of our fingers. Secondly, I think the other benefit is with PAMS, we can very quickly look at trends. So what are the issues that are driving weaknesses in quality or weaknesses in the sort of robustness of what the providers deliver? and then quickly check to see, have we got the support and interventions in the care market in terms of learning and development, workforce recruitment strategies with providers to make sure those either skill gaps or weaknesses are being addressed strategically across the county. I think the most exciting development with PAM's landscape, and from a position of working in a senior management role in the council, is the ability to really understand benchmark value for money, particularly when we've had lots of changes in price because of quite volatile inflation, but we still have significant financial challenges. The ability to understand across the region the kind of level of spend with certain providers or in certain sectors gives us, I think, a much richer view of the cost of provision across the region, whether as a council we're getting value for money, or indeed where we might be underinvesting in a market and then getting associated poor outcomes as a result. The ability to look at that market on a much wider but also deeper set of fields regionally, I think gives us a much richer picture of that opportunity, but also those risks with how we've commissioned stuff in the past. With landscaping in particular, I'm really looking forward to getting more and more local authorities sharing their data, because I think the more that people can share that data, the richer the insight that we'll gain from that, particularly then when we get more and more councils that, whilst we might not border, we're statistically very similar, so that will be really helpful for benchmarking, but also then looking at an analysis of where we spend money outside of Hertfordshire, and how do those providers, particularly specialist services, how do those providers sit within their host local authority, and what can we glean from that in terms of how they're working. And I suppose longer term, when we manage things like our market position statements, what can we deliver in terms of sort of thoughtful strategic commissioning over 3, 5 and 10 years for those areas, rather than a little bit of the firefighting we do now year to year. I think taking that longer, more strategic view, which I think landscape will help us do, will be really powerful.